This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. Moments of Clarity's mission is to educate and end the stigma on mental health through the inspirational stories of our exceptional guests. You can join in the show by calling Tiffany toll-free at 866-826-1340 or on Facebook and Twitter at MOC with Tiffany. Now, here's Tiffany Werner.
Hi, and thanks for listening. This is Moments of Clarity. I'm Tiffany Werner. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about how alcohol affects families, and especially if it's used in excess, and how it can affect kids and family members and loved ones. And I have a special guest calling in from the UK. But first, I want to say hi to Ed behind the glass, and thanks for helping me with the show.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yep. And my guest today is Skyping in all the way from England, UK, and from London, actually. He's a good friend of mine. He's been on the show before, and I'm happy to have him back. He hosts a podcast called Poema, and it's fantastic. And he raises awareness on ending the stigma on mental health. And he also is a big speaker on anxiety and hypersensitivity and how anxiety can really affect and impact someone's life as well. And we were talking yesterday, and we were discussing about how alcohol can affect someone's family. And he is going to be open and talking about it today. And I'm excited to have him back on the show. And I want to welcome to Moments of Clarity, James Prescot. Hey, James.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
It's great to be here.
I think the sound's okay and everything today, so we're gonna go with this, and I can hear you great. Thanks for joining us all the way from over there. It's like 5 hours ahead.
You're welcome. Absolutely, it's great to be here.
So, we were talking about how alcohol can affect families, and you and I were talking a little bit about that yesterday. And you were saying you're going to a meeting and how it helps. So, do you want to talk a little bit about how it impacted you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's better to tell my story, which kind of begins when I was kind of 8 years old. My mum had an asthma attack, which took away her short-term memory. So the rest of her functions were normal, but her short-term memory didn't work. And she'd been quite an independent career woman, teacher before that, but now was unable to work. So obviously staying at home all the time with two children at school, easy for someone to become quite depressed. And that kind of led her into drinking. And I'm guessing that what happened is she had a drink and forgot she'd had a drink and then had another drink, and kind of the cycle kind of began. And and she became an alcoholic, and it really affected me because when she was drunk, she was quite aggressive, quite violent. She was a good parent. She loved me. She was always good to me. She wasn't a nasty person. She was just not very well, and she was depressed, and and alcoholism is a disease. So yeah, and of course, being stuck in the middle of that as the eldest child, I was quite traumatized by it all. I was breaking up my parents' fights almost every day. I was getting bullied at school, and nothing was ever getting done about it. I never told my parents because, well, I think just because I didn't think that it mattered, because my job was to kind of look after them,
right.
As I saw it at the time. Yeah, so obviously this has a big kind of mental impact on you, and it certainly did with me, and I'm only just beginning to realise that and understand just the level of impact it had and how traumatic it was, because you feel responsible and yet you're being neglected. You're not right. Getting attention and love from your primary caregiver at a time when you really need it. At the time I was being formed, a teenager, you're kind of growing up, you're finding yourself. I wasn't getting the love and attention that I needed, and I was having to play a role that I shouldn't have had to play, and so that affects your ability to trust people. It affects anxiety. You get emotional flashbacks, abandonment issues, and all these kind of things. There's a whole load of side effects to that. And it's different for everybody, but having met a lot of other people who have had alcoholic parents, I know that some of their experiences were similar to mine.
Right. Well, we were talking about yesterday, and I was telling you that my dad drank a lot, and he had suffered from PTSD from the war. He fought in Vietnam, and he drank a lot, I think, to cope with the post-traumatic stress. And he never got violent or anything like that, but I definitely remember him sleeping a lot, and that kind of brings back memories of, like, I don't think it bothered me so much then as it, like, just looking back when we were talking about it. And it's like, yeah, that does make sense. Because we were saying, like, there's a lot of things that we could have done with them, with our parents, that they didn't do with us because they were 3 sheets to the wind, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's something to be aware of, because we want to make sure that we don't inflict harm on other people, or that if somebody's at that level, to be able to say, this is hurting us and maybe you need some help. Hang on, we have a caller, and we have Patrick on the line. Wow. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, hey, Tiffany, what's going on?
How are you? Thanks for calling in.
Good. I saw that your subject matter, and I'm actually in recovery currently, and
good for you.
Thank you. But, I guess when you're in the midst of your alcoholism, you don't realize, how it affects your kids. And so, you're kind of lost in yourself, and you're like, well, it's just affecting me. It's not really affecting them. But now that I'm in recovery, I start to, and I hear your story, sir, and I realize now, like, how I affected both my stepson and my biological son. At the time, my youngest son, he was washing his hands obsessively, and I was like, man, why are you always washing your hands? And I mean, he would wash them till they bleed. And
that's your biological son?
Yeah, and I didn't know, what that was. Now, fast forward to today, and I went away for a while I got incarcerated for about 5 years. So on the road back, I'm getting to learn a little bit more about my son, and now he doesn't have those obsessive compulsive habits anymore. So it's tough though when you look back, and that guilt, as a parent, it can keep you stuck in your addiction, because it's hard to let that go, So it's difficult to hear sometimes, how we affect our family, but at the same time, I think when you finally realize that, you got to take control of your situation, and you not expect people to, just because I'm sober doesn't mean that all of a sudden everybody should like me again. So, but, I just appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, because I know that's something that gets lost.
I just want to say a couple of things there. Like, first, like, being alcoholic doesn't make you a bad person, and there's no shame about it. It's a disease, and there's usually circumstances as to why it happens. And so, I mean, I don't blame my mother for what happened, and she's not a bad person, and she's a human being, and human beings make mistakes, and we have weaknesses and imperfections, and I think that's the perspective I have now. And my mother actually did get into recovery as well, and we kind of did leave it behind, which was really, really good. So I just wanted to say that just to kind of add that to the end, that there was a kind of recovery. It didn't continue forever. So I just want to say that. Yeah, thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks for calling, Patrick. Yeah. And you can make amends for behavior after you are in recovery when you're sober. It doesn't mean that you should feel ashamed or punished the rest of your life because of something that you lost control of. It's not like intentional.
I agree with that, but it's just hard because my dad, my biological dad, he's still fighting addiction, and I know sometimes when he talks to me that I can tell he feels guilty about our relationship, and I'm always like, look, man, I left that behind. I don't resent you. I just want you to get better. But I know that keeps him, I think, sometimes stuck in it,
There's shame and guilt.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Some people don't want to face the reality of the consequences of their actions from the past. But sometimes when we become more empowered when we own it and we admit that there's a problem and that we come forward and we do something about it. It's empowering, always. And I mean, you should know, you're in recovery, and you're making amends, and your son's not washing his hands excessively anymore, and you see the positive, and you can learn from that, and give yourself some credit for trying to remedy and fix what you did, fix the damage that.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a long road, but it works, I swear.
Yeah, keep going.
Keep it up. And thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
You too. And for other callers, if you want to call in, 866-826-1340, 866-826-1340, and join us and talk about any time that you've had that you want to talk about. Friend, family member, someone you know, yourself, anything that if you've impacted someone's life and you feel like there's anxiety, and that's what we were kind of getting to with James too, with you, that you're big on hypersensitivity and anxiety, and we were talking and saying, well, where did it come from? And but Patrick that just called in, he was saying his son has anxiety after he was drinking, and the same thing kind of happened to you. And I definitely have anxiety, and I had an alcoholic parent too. So it's funny how that, not funny, haha, but the irony of how anxiety stems from stuff like that, and everything. We all had something like that similar in our families. You know, it's the correlation is something to be aware of.
I think it definitely is. Yeah, and I mean, I was always a very sensitive person as a child. I'm highly sensitive, which is kind of a neurological condition anyway, which means you're more sensitive to being triggered and upset and offended and hurt by things than other people. And I was quite shy and introverted as well, internalized a lot of things just by nature. But then obviously the anxiety comes from not knowing what's going to happen and not being able to trust people and not being worried that bad things are going to happen, being worried that the worst will happen, and needing to be on your guard all the time, and which I kind of had to do at home. And there's certainly a link there because it's a traumatic experience. Growing up as a child with an alcoholic parent, or even living with an alcoholic relative or partner or whatever, is a traumatic experience. It's something that you need to process and work through, and it will have an effect on you. And it's important that you acknowledge that and don't kind of try and hide it, or don't try to build some kind of structure to ignore it or to make it like it's not there, but actually just to confront it and deal with it and work it through with experts, with community. There's communities, like I'm going to a small community which is a kind of a 12-step program for relatives of alcoholics or partners of alcoholics. And there's those kind of things around where people can get support and solidarity, and you can get it can help you deal with the pain that you've experienced and process it in a really healthy way with people around you who can help you. And that's really, really important, rather than just trying to ignore it and bury it and build a structure or certainty around it to kind of hide from it or to numb it with another addiction, which you can easily, or coping mechanism, which anyone can do. So it's important that we deal with that, and that can be difficult, but ultimately it's healthy and it's healing.
I couldn't agree more. And there's other groups, and we have Al-Anon here too in America, like you have over at in the UK.
That's right, Al-Anon,
and we also have Celebrate Recovery, which has different groups, and they have codependency groups and things, and all in the area. I know it's nationwide too, and the anxiety and stuff that comes with it. It's sad. You were saying that you were getting bullied and you didn't feel like you wanted to bother your parents with that. And I want to get to that in a second. But first, we're going to take our commercial break, and we'll be back with Moments of Clarity in just a moment. Please stay tuned.
You're listening to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner. We welcome your input at 866-826-1340. Tiffany will be right back after this.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.